Canada-France-Hawaii Observatory is a world-class 3.6-meter optical infrared telescope. It's one of the best telescopes in the world and has a great vantage point as it's located on top of a dormant volcano. The volcano in question is 4,200 meters or 13,770 feet and can be found on the island of Hawaii. In recent years, various telescopes across the globe have made various incredible discoveries, some of which have helped us to answer some interesting questions in regards to space. The Canada-France-Hawaii Observatory first started being used in 1979, and since then its main goal has been to aid in astronomical discoveries made near its location. The observatory is said to be getting a refurbishment sometime this year, and this will help the telescope deliver even more detailed images. Although these telescopes are built to help scientists and researchers with their work in the field of astronomy, every so often they pick up on things that leaves both the researchers and the public asking various questions. This happened several days ago when the telescope managed to record a cylindrical-looking object that entered the Earth's atmosphere. The object in question is thought to be big, and some even compared it to the space object Oumuamua that was detected passing through the solar system. As of right now, we have no official answer for what the object is, and various ideas have been put forward ranging from a missile test to space junk and meteor and even a UFO. Interestingly, there was a link put out by the observatory, but when you click on the link now all it shows is a not found error code. This has caused some to speculate that either the discovery was not that important, or that it could have been something that wasn't meant to have been picked up on. This is one of the reasons people are going down the UFO route. It's important to remember that a UFO is simply an object that someone cannot identify at that moment in time. Hence why it stands for Unidentified Flying Object. It's only been in recent years that UFOs have been linked to extraterrestrial beings. With that being said, over the last few decades photographs have been taken allegedly showing star-shaped UFOs. In fact, these shaped crafts have recently been reported by pilots, and they are now coming forward with their own stories and encounters with these mysterious crafts. Eyewitnesses describe them as looking like a long tube and usually being black or white in color. They are reported as making no noises and being able to travel at very high speeds. Some of these crafts have even been observed going from a standstill to disappearing in a matter of seconds. This is one of the reasons why some people have linked these crafts to military operations or UFOs. However, the link between the military doesn't make sense as those working for the military have gone forward and said it's not them. Interestingly, the objects that was captured by the observatory appears to have a trail behind it, and this has caused some to speculate that it could be a meteorite. With that being said, when these astronomical bodies enter our atmosphere, they usually make the news, and this is because of how impressive they are. But for some reason, these objects didn't make the news. As mentioned, online users did make the connection between this object and the mysterious space object Oumuamua. Oumuamua caused waves around the scientific community when it was discovered back in October of 2017. The object in question had come from another solar system, and it was quickly given the name of Oumuamua. What stood out about this object, though, was it seemingly appeared out of nowhere, which in turn caused many to ask questions. When researchers were able to lock onto the objects, they could see it traveling around the sun and then shooting away again. They picked up on the fact that Oumuamua showed a really strong non-gravitational acceleration. This tells the researchers that its motion indicated that gravity was not the only thing dictating its path. Interestingly, going back a few months ago, another object that looks similar to Oumuamua was discovered. This was found by amateur astronomers who were looking through Google's guide. Google Sky allows you to look at some of the most impressive sights our galaxy has to offer. While looking through here, the large cylindrical object was found. When compared side by side, you can see the resemblance. The object in question is 1,400 meters long and 120 meters high. People are suggesting that whatever Oumuamua is, this is the same thing. Perhaps if we study this, it will give us a better understanding of what Oumuamua is. Going back to the Canada-France-Hawaii Observatory, some have suggested it's a meteorite, while others say the way it shoots across the sky doesn't make it look like a meteorite. As of right now, there's no definitive answer for what the observatory captures. Over the years, NASA has made some incredible discoveries, but recently they've come forward and said that they've found a planet that could potentially host human life. This planet is known as GJ357d, and NASA have said it's around 31 light-years away from our solar system. It orbits in the Goldilocks zone of the GJ35 system, and this is where scientists have speculated that water could form. Reason it gets the name of a super-Earth is because it's over 6 times the size of Earth. Lisa Kaltenga, who is an astronomy professor, said the following about the planet. It's a distance from the star that is not too hot and not too cold. The planet was not expected to be there, so it's like a freebie because it was discovered in the follow-up. I was on vacation at the time and I was completely surprised. Although this is an incredible discovery, the planet is too far away. What is told researchers, though, is there could be other Earth-like planets nearby. As the human race develops its technological prowess, we have to look to the horizon to see whether or not this technology is helping us move on to the next big thing. With the advent of new robotics and research into artificial intelligence, it appears to be a race against time before we find our inventions slowly smothering us under the weight and responsibility of progress. In order to combat these changes, many scientists and researchers have said we need to look to the stars. Another planet researchers have found interesting is that of Kepler-20f. Although the planet known as Kepler-20f is more than 929 light-years away from Earth, meaning it would take more than 900 years traveling at the speed of light before humanity could even reach the planet. It's still an ideal location for the establishment of future colonies and holds more similarities to Earth than Venus itself. In fact, the planet Kepler-20f is much more cooler than Venus, being more than 100 degrees Fahrenheit cooler at its maximum temperature. When the planet was first discovered back in 2011, it was noticed as being a rocky planet with the same mass, radius, and gravity as planet Earth, while also supporting a rich atmosphere believed to be containing vast amounts of water vapor. Unfortunately, this water vapor caused a runaway greenhouse effect that seized the planet at an overall temperature too hot to support life. However, with a few modifications to the environment, it could very well be a much better twin than Venus without requiring the extensive needs of terraforming as on our neighboring planet. On the 3rd of September 2003, the Hubble telescope would discover something that would change the way we view our universe. The Hubble pointed its cameras at a small region of space and it managed to capture many images. All these images were combined from the data collected and ended up showing scientists this. It's estimated that in this one small section alone is over 10,000 galaxies, and inside these galaxies could be millions or billions of planets. It's really tough to get your head around these kinds of numbers, but it just shows you how vast the universe really is. Scientists have said that although this find is incredible, this was found in only a tiny region of space, suggesting that hundreds of millions of galaxies are still out there waiting to be discovered. The image has become known as the Hubble Ultra Deep Field, and researchers have said that some of the galaxies you see in this image could have formed shortly after the Big Bang. What's interesting is that on the 23rd of January 2019, scientists managed to create a deeper version of the image, which has allowed them to view the galaxies in more detail. This told them that the largest galaxies were in fact 2 times larger than previously thought. Cutting across billions of light years, scientists have said this photograph represents a deep core sample of the universe. Another interesting fact to come from this research is that some of these galaxies cannot be seen in visible light. This comes down to the lights being given out from certain galaxies not being able to reach certain aerospanes, and that some light has also been absorbed by intergalactic hydrogen. As mentioned, astronomers have suggested that some of the galaxies could have formed only a couple of 100 million years after the formation of the universe. This means that these planets could be hosts to very complex life. A planet that's had billions of years to form and mature could hold things we couldn't comprehend. On the other hand, they could be like most other planets and be too hostile for life. With that being said, though, complex organisms have shown researchers they can survive in harsh conditions. This includes things like tardigrades. Cameras are great for capturing memories. They allow us to look back on memories of our life and reflect on what was going on at that point in time. Many of us have taken photographs of our loved ones and friends, and every so often these photos are brought to the surface. However, some have found old photographs they don't remember taking, or even more worryingly remember taking them but don't remember certain individuals being there at the time. This was the case for this photograph that not many have seen. The image in question shows a group of friends playing out in the field. However, it's the mysterious figure in the middle, that's causing many to speculate what was captured on camera. It's said the photograph was taken during the 1980s or 1990s. 2 photographs were taken on this day, each several seconds apart. In this photograph, though, we can see the mysterious figure standing in the middle of the group of friends. Online users who have seen the photos have said that in the photograph with the entity you can see only 4 friends, whereas in the other photograph you can see all 5. This has caused some to speculate that the 5th friend is actually the mysterious being. As some have pointed out, although the 5th friend is wearing black, they have white markings all across their clothing, and this would most likely appear in the photographs. Another slightly darker suggestion is that the people in the photograph didn't know they were having their picture taken, and the dark figure is the last thing these kids saw. However, there's no evidence to back up this story, and was most likely started to turn this photo into a type of urban legend. Others have suggested the figure is wearing black clothing, similar to that of a monk. All of the world is stories of ghost monks, and these are described as being very similar to the figure in this photograph. Another idea is that something bad happened in the area and now this figure can't escape. Those studying the paranormal have said that bad energies can take a long time to leave an area, and this is why paranormal beings are often spotted in places that have a dark history. For example, one of these has become known as non-intelligent hauntings. This is often best described as a collection of energy that hasn't been able to leave a certain era on this planet, and in turn people are always seeing the same energy over and over. These can appear in human form such as those of the shadow people, and often what you'll see is the entity playing the same event over and over again. Could this be then that one of these entities was accidentally captured on camera? Since first being posted online, many theories have been put forth. However, as of today, the mysterious photograph remains a mystery. Throughout history, there have been reports of different paranormal entities. All cultures talk about the paranormal and afterlife in one form or another, and even to this day millions of people believe in the paranormal. From a scientific perspective, it's said that what people are seeing is nothing more than natural phenomena or our minds playing tricks on us. One of the issues is that many of us haven't encountered anything paranormal, so it's hard to judge or give an opinion when we haven't experienced it ourselves. Those who have, however, have said it's changed the way they view the world, and that they now believe we share this world with mysterious entities. Over the years, paranormal researchers have given names to certain entities. For example, the poltergeist is said to be a type of ghost that's able to cause people harm and even move objects with force. The shadowed people will appear and disappear before people, seemingly made entirely out of nothing but a shadowy substance. Interestingly, these shadow figures are not limited to human form. According to witnesses, the black dogs of the British Isles are otherworldly apparitions that many believe to be hellhounds, ready to attack anyone nearby. It's described as being larger than a normal dog and featuring a shadow-like body with glowing red eyes. Many claim to have encountered the creatures shortly after a terrible storm, or in areas associated with death such as that of old places of execution and ancient buildings. The shadowed people are described as being black masses. They can often be seen around objects that are said to be haunted or in places where something bad has happened. One of the first things people say they feel when they see them is fear, and that it's as if they drain all of the energy out of the room and leave only darkness. Some have reported them as having glowing red eyes, while others say they have jet black eyes. It's not known what they want, but those who have seen them have said they think they're bad. Other people have seen them while trying to lucid dream. A lucid dream is a dream in which the person is not only aware they're dreaming, but can also control their dream. Some have expressed their doubts about whether this is real, but lucid dreaming is backed up by scientific studies. A 2009 study by the Neurological Laboratory in Frankfurt revealed increased brain activity during lucid dreams. Some people who have claimed to master this have said they can make any situation happen. However, there is another side to this. Many who have attempted to lucid dream say that they've experienced something that's put them off it forever. Some describe it as the man in black, while others call it the boogeyman. It seems that if it's not done correctly, lucid dreams can give you an incredibly bad nightmare. Some of these have even affected the person weeks after the experience. What's interesting is that many of the reports are eerily similar. This has caused researchers to speculate that what people are seeing is indeed genuine. Paranormal researchers, however, have warned people against trying to contact these entities. One of the ways it's said you're able to do this is by lucid dreaming. However, if it's not done properly, it's said you can have a negative experience. This was the case for a woman who tried it for the first time. She said the following about her encounter. My experience happened several years ago in the house I grew up. I lived in a large farmhouse built nearly 200 years ago, and my parents had spent the best part of 5 years renovating the house. When it was finished, it looked amazing and was a lovely place to live in. One night, me and my friend got on the subject of the paranormal and other weird subjects, and I explained to her that I wasn't sure if I believed in any of them. She told me that I needed to open my mind, and that there was a way I could do this through my dreams. She explained that if I followed these rules, I would be able to control what was going on in my dreams, and that I would even remember it when I woke up. I know there's many different ways, but she told me a way that worked great for her. She said that I had to fight the urge to fall asleep and keep focused on one part of the room. I did this, but it got to the point where I could hardly keep my eyes open. But not long after, I had a really strange sensation come over me. It was like I was sinking into the bed. The worst part about it, though, was that I couldn't move. I was completely frozen in place. The room was not dark, as it was dimly lit by the light on my garage. That was when I noticed something dark in the corner of my closet. It wasn't really a figure, but more like an opaque mass that stood against the light. I tried to blink the sleep from my eyes, failing to understand what I was looking at. Suddenly, without time to react, I felt the other side of the bed sink down and covers stretching over me. I could then feel what appeared to be 2 hands wrapped around me from behind. The pressure of the hands on my chest pulled me downwards slightly. A hollow, raspy voice spoke so loud that it sounded like it was in my head. Told me I was marked. That was when I shot up in bed and completely out of whatever sleep state I was in. There was nothing in my room that could have created this shadow. This experience has affected my life, as I now struggle to sleep without having a light on. I will not sleep in anyone else's house or a hotel. What's strange is that my friend said this would definitely work, but clearly it only works for certain people. I wasn't someone who actively believed or followed the paranormal. I was nervous going into this, but I was actually happy and excited to try something new. But after my experience, I will never do it again. Every year, researchers do an amazing job at discovering anomalies out in space. Finding out what they mean and why they're here has proven to be sometimes difficult. With space being so vast, it's said we'll never truly be able to wrap our heads around it. However, that hasn't stopped some of the world's greatest minds at trying to understand what's lurking out in the vastness of space. Over the last few decades, telescopes and observatories have been an essential part for aiding with the discovery of new galaxies, planets, and nebulas. One of these recently helped astronomers and researchers log on to a mysterious object lurking just outside of our solar system. The team used the Very Large Array Radio Telescope and Observatory, which can be found in central New Mexico. It's not just one telescope here that's helped researchers with their goals. In fact, the observatory is home to over 20 large radio telescopes, all of which have some of the best tech installed into them to help researchers hunt the cosmos. Perhaps some of the most impressive discoveries made here by the astronomers include that of black holes, young stars, and anomalies in the Milky Way galaxy. Being found at an elevation of 2,100 meters, or 6,970 feet, makes these telescopes some of the best on the planet. And it's very likely they will be making more amazing discoveries for years to come. One such discovery to come from using the Very Large Array of telescopes was that of a mystery rogue planet that was detected outside of our solar system. The reason it gets the term of a rogue planet is because researchers couldn't detect if the planet has a parent star. One of the reasons these planets make the news is because they've been ejected from the planetary system or have never been bound to a star. In fact, astronomers who have studied these types of planets have come forward and said there could be billions of them in the Milky Way galaxy alone. One of the most recent rogue planets is that of SIMP J01365663 plus 0933473. The planet has been described as being 12.7 times larger than Jupiter, and has an incredible magnetic field which is said to be far more impressive than Jupiter's. This is an impressive comparison, as Jupiter produces some of the most impressive auroras our solar system has to offer. Going back a few years ago, NASA captured one of Jupiter's most impressive auroras to date. They are much bigger than Earth's and also produce thousands of times more energy. Another interesting thing about this is Jupiter creates its own auroras. Earth doesn't create its own. Instead, Earth's auroras are created by solar storms. One of the reasons Jupiter can do this is because of its strong magnetic field. This allows it to grab charged particles from its surroundings. These auroras were first picked up on when the Voyager 1 spacecraft passed by Jupiter in the 1970s. You would think that this would be a rare occurrence, but astronomers said during a 2007 press release they were so frequent that every time they looked at Jupiter through a telescope they could see the auroras. After conducting further tests on the Rho planet, astronomers have estimated it's around 200 million years old. It's not going to be a place that humans will want to visit. The planet's temperature averages at around 1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and due to its size, the planet almost makes it into the category of a gas giant. One of the lead researchers who worked on discovering the planet said the following: "This object is right at the boundary between a planet and a brown dwarf or a failed star, and is giving us some surprises that can potentially help us understand magnetic processes in both stars and planets." Astronomers in 2018 also went on to say the following: "In 2018, we noted that detecting SIMF with the Very Large Array through its auroral radio emissions meant we was able to have new ways of detecting exoplanets, including the elusive rogue ones not orbiting a parent star. This particular object is exciting because studying its magnetic dynamo mechanisms can give us new insights on how some types of mechanisms can operate in extrasolar planets, planets beyond our solar system. We think these mechanisms can work not only in brown dwarfs, but also in both gas giants and terrestrial planets." Another mysterious rogue planet that was captured by astronomers was that of the Chow 110913773444. However, there is an air of mystery that surrounds this object, as researchers are not sure what this object actually is. When it was first discovered, they classified it as a protoplanetary disk. However, many astronomers want to classify it as either a sub-brown dwarf or a rogue planet. Another mysterious space structure that researchers have been able to study is that of the cosmic web. It's been described as being the brain of the universe. This is because the cosmic web appears to have strands of structures that link many galaxies, and when first looking at it, the web even looks like the inside of a brain. Recent observations show scientists that galaxies believed to be around 11 to 12 billion light-years away are linked together, and this is being held by a network of galaxy filament. This filament could help researchers to answer questions regarding how the universe was formed and details about the Big Bang. Professor Michel Famigali said the following about the discovery: "It's very exciting to see for the first time multiple and extended filaments in the early universe. We finally have a way to map these structures directly and to understand in detail their role in regulating the formation of supermassive black holes in galaxies." Another interesting discovery has been made resting a short 40 light-years away from our planet, and it appears to be the largest mass of diamonds to ever have existed within our solar neighbors. Known as 55 Cancri E, the rest of planets made almost entirely out of diamonds that's expected to be roughly 8 times the collective mass of our Earth. Unfortunately, if you planned on mining the planet to fire its precious gems, you would find the entire planet to be so hostile that it's most likely almost entirely covered in lava. The planet is expected to be tidally locked, which means there rests a permanent day side and a permanent night side, as there is no rotation to create a day and night cycle. This leaves the day side of the planet to be more than 1,700 degrees Celsius in temperature, a temperature more than hot enough to turn iron into liquid. Its gravity works out to be more than 8 times that of Earth's gravity, and the large amount of data concerning surface temperature variations have been connected to a large amount of possible volcanic activity, and this releases large clouds of dust that can cover the whole air of the planet and turn it into darkness. If that doesn't make mining operations seem near impossible, the orbit of the planet around its sun takes less than 18 hours to complete. That means that an entire year on 55 Cancri is less than a single day on Earth, making landing and launching to and from the planets nearly impossible to maintain. Something interesting in regards to space was announced by researchers a while back, and it also involves tardigrades. One question that's come up is, what is the toughest animal on Earth? Although many may look to some of the larger creatures that walk the planet, Scientists have said it's the small creatures that come out on top, and one of these goes by the name of tardigrade. Many may not be aware of these creatures, but they're micro-animals with segmented bodies. They are usually water-dwelling creatures but have been found everywhere on the planet. They thrive in harsh conditions. For example, they've been found in the Antarctic ice, deep in ocean beds, dried-up lakes, and even high in the Himalayas. Recently, these creatures made the news for heading into space. It goes back to an Israeli spacecraft that tried to land on the lunar surface. However, the mission didn't go to plan and the spacecraft ended up crashing on the moon. This mission occurred on the 11th of April, and now researchers are saying the lunar surface could be filled with these tiny creatures. The original mission's plan was to land a robotic lander that had tardigrades on it. Due to the unfortunate event, though, it's not known if these small creatures survived, although scientists have said it's very likely due to how resilient they are. It's not known how long they will live for, but scientists have said it's very likely they'll be on the lunar surface for a while. Another worry that some researchers have put forward is that it's not a good idea to go polluting the moon. It's no secret that many missions have gone to the moon, and over the years humans have left behind a lot of debris. Most of this comes from redundant missions or because we can't return certain things. Going back to tail grain, scientists have called them extremophobes due to them being able to survive in such harsh conditions. One thing scientists are doing is studying these creatures to see if we can replicate what they do. If we were able to take some of the tardigrade's abilities and place them in a human, it would make us much more superior. At the moment, the human body is not great at handling harsh conditions. In fact, for humans to survive in an environment, everything has to be exactly right. It's been estimated that tardigrades have been around for over 500 million years, meaning they outlived the dinosaurs. For the last few decades, dinosaurs have made it into the mainstream media. They've been featured in films, television shows, and books. Throughout the history of our planet, untold billions of species have come and gone throughout the ages, facing extinction-level events that required new life to take on different forms. To this day, though, people are able to get their hands on ancient relics of the past, and these include things like dinosaur teeth and bones. Although these ancient giants have been extinct for many years now, they still interest us to this day. And although we know a lot about them, there's still an air of mystery surrounding them. The idea that birds, including chickens, evolved from dinosaurs isn't something that's new. This theory has been around since the 19th century. This was when scientists found fossils of a bird with the name of Archaeopteryx. The bird had feathers and wings, but it had the features of a dinosaur. And some more fossils found more recently suggested it looked similar to a chicken. Archaeopteryx came onto the scene in the 1860s and surprised researchers when they discovered that it had several unbird-like features. For example, researchers at the time noticed that it had sharp teeth, claws in each hand, and a feathery coat. Interestingly, going back a few years ago, biologists took it upon themselves to carry out a test which would show them what a chicken and a dinosaur hybrid would look like. The scientists working on the project were able to isolate clusters of genes that aid in facial development. The team was then able to discover a way of stopping them in the chicken's embryo. After doing this, what they were left with was an animal that looked very similar to what a velociraptor would have looked like. The lead author of the study, Bart Andre Jala from Yale University, said the following: "We had not set out to create a dinosaur chicken. When examining an important evolutionary transformation, we wanted to find out the underlying process. The beak is the part of the avian skeleton that is most extensively and radically diversified. We wanted to find out if the beak was functional. The scientists wanted to highlight the fact that the beak develops in a much different way to snouts. This is because they use a different set of genes. This proves that the beak is an adaptation, as opposed to being a nose shape that is slightly different." Michael Benton from the Bristol University in the UK said the following: "I believe that the move from the snout to a beak occurred around 40 to 50 million years after the Archaeopteryx. As of right now, the scientists have no plans to hatch these raptor-looking chickens." The scientists went on to say the following: "These weren't drastic modifications. They are far less weird than many breeds of chickens developed by chicken hobbyists and breeders. The rest of the animal looked okay. But one needs to think about this carefully from an ethical point of view." In other news, It was announced not so long ago that scientists in Russia and South Korea plan to bring back prehistoric creatures. The team are currently carrying out research in a lab that costs $5.9 million to build. They hope to study animals that were once extinct by looking at their cells. Some of the creatures they are looking at bringing back include the cave lion, woolly mammoth, woolly rhino, and species of horses. At this point in time, researchers have said this is near impossible to do with dinosaurs, but some of these Ice Age creatures still have intact tissues and cells, which makes this process much easier. This is no longer a fantasy. Scientists from Harvard and Russia have already delved into mixing genes to bring back species that are extinct. They want to put woolly mammoth genes into an Asian elephant, and they plan to do this by the end of 2020. Back in 2005, a controversial discovery was made when a paleontologist discovered one of ancient Earth's most impressive predators. Tyrannosaurus rex has gone down in history as being one of the most well-known dinosaurs. This tyrant lizard king would have ruled the Cretaceous 66 million years ago. It's well known that the Tyrannosaurus rex had the strongest bite of any land animal. This has been proven with recent computer simulations. This giant predator would have crushed its prey with over 13,000 pounds of pressure per square inch. The king of the dinosaurs needed thick-necked muscles to hold up its large skull and power its forceful bite. The Tyrannosaurus rex was one of the largest carnivorous dinosaurs that ever lived. It measured up to 43 feet long and weighed as much as 7 tons. Over the years, there has been heated debate about how T-Rex hunted. At first, it was thought that this predator actively went after his prey. Then paleontologists changed their mind and suggested that Tyrannosaurus rex was actually a scavenger. Turns out, however, that it most likely did both. Its teeth have been found embedded inside herbivores. T-Rex would have fed on the large herbivores of the Cretaceous. This would have included triceratums. It's been theorized that Tyrannosaurus rex had a secret to taking down these large animals. Going after an 8-ton Triceratops would have been risky, even for T-Rex. These giant predators, although powerful, had to be careful of their prey's weapons. Triceratops had large horns and frills. If they were able to hit a T-Rex with these, it would do an incredible amount of damage. However, it's been put forward that Tyrannosaurus rex had a septic bind. This giant would have had to have consumed over 500 kilograms of meat per day. T-Rex's teeth had very sharp serrations, and it's been theorized that meat would have got stuck inside there. This rotten flesh inside their teeth would have contained a massive amount of bacteria. Paleontologists suggested that T-Rex used this way to take down its prey. It would simply bite the herbivore anywhere on its body and then waits for the infection to kick in. This would only take a matter of days, and while this was happening, the T-Rex would be tracking it to the entire time. Once the Triceratops was weak, the T-Rex would go in for the final blow. A few years back, a 68 million yard bone from a T-Rex was found that had soft tissue inside, and right from the get-go, this discovery left people with many questions. The discovery was made by Mary Schweitzer, a molecular paleontologist at North Carolina State University. The discovery was made in 2005 when her and her team found the T-Rex. Soft tissue and blood was found inside this Tyrannosaurus rex specimen. Even other scientists were confused as they thought soft tissue should degrade in less than 1 million years, and here you have a 65 million yard fossil that's still showing soft tissue. However, as of today, new research has suggested that iron in the dinosaur's body preserved the tissue before it could decay. One thing that paleontologists have questioned over the years is how this creature walked. When first discovered, it's thought that T-Rex stood on its back legs with its tail dragging on the ground. However, it's now believed that T-Rex walked similar to modern-day birds, with their tail in the air and head face forwards. Recently, scientists devised an interesting way to find out what Tyrannosaurus rex would have looked like while walking. Researchers from the University of Chile and the University of Chicago decided to use live chickens. Scientists have said that chickens are the closest living relative of the T-Rex, so using them in the study was important. The researchers placed a fake dinosaur tail to the burns. The researchers believed that modern-day birds such as chickens inherited the way they moved from their dinosaur ancestors. The prosthetic limbs were made from a wooden stick and modeling clay and attached to the burns. It's been put forward that the tail mass of a T-Rex would have equaled to around 15% of its body mass, and they made sure this was the same for the chicken. One of the researchers said the following: "Here we show that by manipulating the location of the center of mass in living birds, it's possible to recreate limb posture. Chickens race wearing artificial tails and consequently with more posteriorly located center of mass showed a more vertical orientation of the femur during standing and increased femoral displacement during locomotion." Although this study has helped us to understand how T-Rex may have walked, dinosaurs still remain a mystery of our past. There are still many questions that need to be answered. Every year, scientists and researchers are uncovering more dinosaur specimens that are helping us to better understand what life would have been like millions of years ago. A new species of dinosaur called Wewarosaurus has been discovered from an opal mine in Wawara. This is close to Lightning Ridge town in Australia's outback. The fossil found in the minas of a reptile the size of a dog that walked on its hind legs and existed around 100 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. Wewarosaurus belonged to a group of dinosaurs known as ornithopods, which are known for eating plants and having beaks with serrated teeth. Ornithopods were abundant in Lightning Ridge in prehistoric times, and it's believed they moved in packs to protect themselves from harm. The fossil was originally found and excavated by miners in 2013 in a mine at Wawara. Antarctica is one of the least explored places on the planet. It's perhaps best known for its harsh climate and beautiful wildlife. Over the years, though, there have been some mysterious discoveries on the continent. Each year, research is carried out here and experiments are conducted. Scientists have recently reported that a massive object that could change our understanding is hidden beneath the ice. These claims, of course, theorists to speculate about what could be lying under the ice. This mysterious anomaly is believed to be under an area called Wilkes Land. The area is over 150 miles across and has a minimum depth of around 2,500 feet. Interestingly, researchers have suggested that it could be the remains of a giant asteroid. If this is the case, it would have been twice the size of the asteroid that struck Mexico 66 million years ago. This could help to answer one of the planet's most mysterious events. During the Permian-Triassic, a massive extinction event happened. It caused over 96% of Earth's sea creatures and over 70% of the vertebrate organisms living on Earth to perish. This giant rock could have been behind that event. This mysterious anomaly was first brought to the attention of researchers in 2006. This was when NASA's satellite picked up on gravitational changes. Going back last year, scientists announced that they had managed to reach a subglacial lake which was under Antarctica. Incredibly, this lake was over 3,000 feet below the surface of the ice. The Subglacial Antarctic Lake Scientific Access said the following about the event: "It's taken almost 2 whole days of drilling to reach the subglacial lake during this holiday season. We had a huge team with us, and it wouldn't have been possible without them." The team of researchers included over 40 scientists, drudgers, and various other staff members. Incredibly, the researchers were able to see a glimpse of the giant subglacial body of water. It's been estimated that it's twice the size of Manhattan. The researchers are currently studying the lake and hope to understand its depth, temperatures, and what kind of life is down there. Due to it being a remote place, some have come forward and said there could be creatures down there unknown to science. They've planned to place remote-controlled robots down there to capture some footage. This will help the scientists better understand what they're dealing with. One of the chief scientists said they were unsure of what to expect, as it's such a new discovery and they're still learning as they went along. Although this sounds like an easy task, it's not just a matter of digging a hole. There's specific steps that need to happen for this to work. For example, the scientists needed to test the water was clean. After doing this, it turned out the water was as clean as filtered water. One of the scientists on the mission said the following: "It's exciting that we are sampling the deepest standing water bodies humans have ever accessed beneath Antarctica. This is a slow process though, and it will take a few years to collect and process the data." Interestingly, it's been said this might not be the only subglacial lake in the area. Researchers have confirmed and said there could be around 400 lakes hiding beneath Antarctica's ice sheets. Is anyone's guess as to what could be hiding down there? It's believed by many different researchers from around the world that the continent of Antarctica was once inhabited with that of lush green forests surrounding the entire area. Evidence of this can be found when looking at a team of archaeologists and researchers that led an expedition in Antarctica in November of 2016. This mission lasted for several months and ended in January of 2017. The team found evidence of lush forests in the region after locating and discovering several different traces of fertile growing lands, areas of climate change in the past, as well as large amounts of fossil fragments from ancient trees, and these dated as far back as 260 million years ago. Interestingly, this timeline correlates with one very important event in the past, the Permian period, also known as the greatest mass extinction event in the history of the world. Before this event, there was much more carbon naturally in the atmosphere, of which created lush green forest all around the world. This large amount of carbon allowed for species to grow in the region. The forestification of deserts and the ability for our atmosphere to support larger forms of animal life on the land. It's interesting then to consider this idea that roughly 260 million years ago, the continent of Antarctica would have been a densely populated lush green forest, with a tremendous variation in wildlife and ecosystems. A professor at the University of Wisconsin argues that the continent as a whole was much warmer and even more humid than many areas today. In fact, he is overwhelming evidence that the area would have been closer in resemblance to the denser forest found over the globe. Additionally, at the rate of the burning fossil fuels, of which is reintroducing this carbon into the atmosphere that was lost during the Permian extinction, we will soon be reaching atmospheric conditions once again, of which will allow the continent of Antarctica to be a thriving frost within a few more hundred years. Shortly after the expedition uncovered the fossils of ancient trees in the region, researchers were obsessed with uncovering proof of larger life throughout the area. Back in 2010, researchers used techniques in explosives and large-scaling blasting to blout layers of surface rock against the Antarctic mountainsides. This was to uncover possible fossil layers buried deep beneath the glaciers throughout the area. After several months of searching and mining for fossils, the research team uncovered exactly what they were hoping for. It appeared that fossils of ancient dinosaurs inhabiting the region millions of years ago in the past, roughly around the same time after the Permian extinction, were uncovered after going down past the layers of the glacial rocks in the region. Interestingly, bones of another strange creature have been uncovered that's believed to be that of a species of dinosaur never before found. According to their reports, the paleontologists accompanying the research team discovered a densely packed grouping of fossils belonging to different types of dinosaurs, and these dinosaurs are known as sauropods. Sauropod skulls are usually very rare to find in other areas, as they were very delicate during the life of the creature, and so a completely intact skull is rare to find in one completely fossilized piece. These skulls are known by the paleontologists as being delicate. The bones of these massive dinosaurs were said to be 50% lighter than previously thought, so the fact it survived this long is really impressive. Luckily for the team, among the densely packed fossils were that of bones of rims, vertebrae, arms, legs, and a completely intact skull. Many of these bones have already been rendered in complete 3D imaging technologies that will help to preserve their finds for all time. Another interesting discovery comes in the form of the Piri-Reis map. This map is the oldest map to show the Americas, and to this day it still confuses many people. In 1929, a group of historians discovered something incredible drawn on a gazelle skin. After the document was studied, research and tests showed that it was genuine. It was drawn in 1513 by Piri-Reis, a famous admiral of the Turkish fleet in the 16th century. What's interesting is that he's primarily known today for his maps and charts, specifically for how accurate they are. He was ranked highly within the Turkish Navy. However, he went on to say that he compiled and copied certain pieces of data from other sources. One thing that many people question is why it shows Antarctica without ice. Antarctica was mostly icy forest, and for the last 15 million years it's been a frozen desert under a thick ice sheet. On the map, the northern coastline of Antarctica is detailed. Another thing that stands out is the map is very accurate. How did this happen when the map was created 300 years before it was discovered? Interestingly, on the 6th of July 1960, the U.S. Air Force responded to a letter sent by Professor Charles H. Habgood. He was asking for an evaluation of the ancient map. This was the response. Your request of evaluation of certain unusual features of the Pyre Recentarctican map of 1513 by this organization has been reviewed. The claim that the lower part of the map portrays the Princess Martha coast of Queen Maud and the Palma Peninsula is reasonable. We find this is the most logical and correct interpretation of the map. The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of seismic profiles, some of which were made by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline has been mapped before it's covered by the ice cap. This part of Antarctica is ice-free. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of the geographic knowledge in 1513. Harold said, Lieutenant Colonel, United States Air Force Commander, so there are some conflicting reports. How can this map show Antarctica with no ice? Scientists state there's been ice on the continent for millions of years. Many experts have analyzed the diagram and realized it portrays an accurate depiction of the world. When you think of space exploration, you may think of companies like NASA and modern-day equipment like rockets and space stations. However, there's various scriptures and books that detail our ancient ancestors possessing knowledge of the stars. This has caused some interesting conversations to be put forward, with some suggesting the idea that our ancestors may have had more knowledge of the stars, celestial bodies in the universe than we previously thought. How then were they able to do this? Back in those days, they didn't possess the technology or equipment we have today. Drawings and writings may contradict this, and although this sounds outlandish, these theories are based on evidence that we've managed to discover in recent years. Perhaps one of the most interesting discoveries comes from that of the ancient Mayan civilization. In the 7th century AD, Pacal the Great was the ruler of this time. During his time, he oversaw some of the most impressive sites at Palenque. During this era, the civilization was able to build things that many would say wasn't possible for that age. These people built complex streams that would transport them fresh water. However, one image of the ruler has caused much speculation among certain groups. The image in question depicts the king descending into the main underworld. All around the carving, we can see objects that are said to represent celestial objects. This includes Venus, the sun, and the moon. Some individuals have suggested that what this shows is the ancient Mayan civilization working on their most recent invention, and that structure has something to do with space travel. Our ancestors were obsessed with space. All over the world, these ancient civilizations found ways to observe the cosmos. Why were they interested in space? And what do these carvings show us? As of right now, archaeologists have said that carving isn't important and doesn't have anything to do with space. But others disagree, saying that the Maya people were close to developing something that may have taken them to the stars. This is of course hypothetical, but in recent years researchers have been able to find writings that prove ancient man was interested in the cosmos. This discovery was made in 1961 in Romania. An engineer discovered a strange-looking manuscript. While looking through the ancient pages, something caught the researcher's attention. It turns out the papers were detailing concepts about rocketry, and this existed in a time when these types of things weren't meant to be around. The individual who worked on these designs was a man by the name of Comrade Haas, and he lived between 1509 and 1576. Interestingly, although he was able to design these incredible concepts of rocketry, not much is known about his life. But due to the findings by the engineer, it's caused scholars and researchers to become much more interested in this man. One of the first things the researchers noticed was that these drawings were very similar to multi-stage rockets. This is complex rocketry and is something that consists of 2 or more engines that are placed on top of each other. This is normally used in rockets that need to reach high altitudes. So the question here then is, why was someone hundreds of years ago trying to create a multi-stage rocket? It turns out that Mr. Comrade Haas was a talented man. The manuscript that was discovered is over 450 pages, and it hints at Comrade Haas being a master engineer and someone who was looked upon during this era. The manuscript also details artillery and rocket technology. Interestingly, the invention Haas was working on can be found in the manuscript. Comrade Haas was taken on by the military at an unknown time, and some have theorized this was because at the time he would have been one of the most impressive engineers around, having a good understanding of rocketry in a time when many people wouldn't have understood what it was. It's incredible that someone during this time was even able to come up with these ideas. And researchers have even said he is the first person to put into writing the concepts of multi-stage rockets, further saying that his concepts were put to the test and they did in fact work. Incredibly, his work doesn't stop there. He went on to design in detail spacecrafts, delta fins, bell nozzles, and even liquid fuel. Being one of the first people to create complex things like this, it begs the question of where he's getting these ideas from. It's interesting to think in this one manuscript it details a man being able to grasp the concepts of rocketry. It makes you wonder how many more documents are out there that talk about the secrets of the past. Found among the dense vegetation are hidden wells with complex structures and more hidden artifacts and civilizations than anywhere else in the world. This means that millions of undiscovered strange artifacts have been lost to history all throughout the world's dense jungles. However, over the years a number of these have been discovered by researchers. The Olmeca, known as the first major civilization in Mexico. They appeared around 1600 BCE. They were actually the first people who figured out how to turn latex of the rubber tree into something that can be easily shamed. Olmec culture has been a huge influence on many later civilizations, for example the Maya. This society was known for their massive stone heads they carved from basalt, a volcanic rock. There are not many things that have been written about the Olmec, but from the archaeological evidence we have today, it seems they were not very economically confined. The Olmec were defined by their art style. They were able to build with various materials such as clay, bustle, jade, and even greenstone. Most of their art was made out of green-colored materials, so much of the art found is only based on nature. The best pieces of art they've left behind are those colossal massive heads. There are 17 massive stones that represent humans. Made out of large boulders, all of these heads date back to around 900 BCE. The heads that have been found are said to portray Olmec men, all of them having distinct features of their civilization. Not a single head is the same as another. Each of the heads has their own unique headdress representing specific individuals. It's believed the heads are representing the portraits of powerful individuals of the Olmec civilization, but the methods and logic behind how they were transported and carved stays a mystery. Additionally, researchers over the years have found several of these large carved heads, each one measuring roughly to be 3 meters in height, 3 meters in width, and more than 40,000 pounds in weight. Interestingly, it appears that the stone heads are impossible to date and can only be measured by looking at the time in which the large stones were buried to predict the time of their creation. The accepted information from researchers is that the heads were buried during 900 BC but could predate this time by more than several hundred years in creation. Despite the lack of scientific proof as to the age, researchers have characterized the heads as having come from the pre-classic period of the Mesoamerican chronology, dating somewhere close to 1500 to 1000 BC. Every year, researchers manage to discover new things about our past. Back in 2018, there appeared to be a discovery that in all pyramids from around the world, including Bosnian pyramid structures and ancient Mayan temple structures, there were large bodies of water discovered in chambers that ran beneath the pyramids and tunnels that could have stretched for over 10 miles. Interestingly enough, when researchers began looking at the pyramids at Giza, there appeared to be a massive underground water tunnel network that run underneath the Giza Plateau, and that has long since been dried out. This led researchers to look more into what was believed to be a naturally formed water chambers, and the roles they could have played in the construction of the large pyramids and other pyramid structures. They found that although water beneath structures usually plays a large role in the instability of the base of the structure, it appeared as if the network of tunnels and water chambers found in pyramids from all over the world appear to not threaten the stability of the pyramid. This led researchers to believe the tunnels must have been accounted for in the construction of the pyramid, or possibly added after construction with the pyramid stability in mind. Still, to this day, Egyptologists and researchers are completely unaware as to what the role of these underwater chambers helped play in the construction of the pyramids, and why they seem to be so important to the structures overall. Currently, the only working theory is the introduction of a hydromechanical purpose, or that of added underground pressure to a certain area of the structure. What's interesting is that these discoveries and structures are only a small portion of what's managed to survive. Researchers have come forward and said that 98% of our past has vanished from our planet. so it's unlikely we'll know the details of our ancient past. A Navy pilot who recorded an unidentified flying object in 2004 has gone viral. The object in question is said to resemble a tic-tac, and over the last few decades many military personnel have come forward with their encounters. Mr. Underwood, the Navy pilot, came forward with his encounter and described the object as traveling very fast. The object immediately went viral across many sites, mainly because the military tend to stay away from these types of encounters. And even if they do happen, they don't tend to comment on them. However, this video is being described by some theorists as being the best UFO footage to come out in recent years. Interestingly though, the Navy pilot behind the incident isn't a fan of the newfound fame. In recent interviews, he stated he doesn't want to get involved with the UFO and doesn't think it's alien in nature. He went on to say the object in question is a UFO, an object that, at that moment in time, he couldn't identify. Although at first, some deemed the footage as fake, U.S. Navy officials come forward and confirm the clips are genuine. Radar operator Kevin Day then came forward and said that he'd picked up on the mysterious object. Not only that, but there was a group of them flying in a tight formation. This report, however, came several days before the Navy pilot encountered the craft. This has caused some to suggest the UFOs were in the area before they were encountered by the pilot. This isn't uncommon, and some individuals have even seen some of the most famous UFO crafts days before they make the news. The radar operator said the crafts were moving slowly. This caused some to speculate that the objects could have been birds. But the operator said the objects were flying too high to be birds. And interestingly, they were flying too slow to be any conventional aircrafts. The unidentified flying objects were flying at 28,000 feet and traveling at an approximate speed of 138 miles per hour. The objects also weren't on an established flight path, meaning they couldn't be linked to any conventional airgrounds. The operator tried to identify what they were, but couldn't come up with a logical answer. Mr. Underwood then had his encounter while he was on a flight training exercise. This happened in 2005, and he was able to remain silent about it for almost 15 years. He's had several interviews talking about the object and seems confused about what he encountered that day. In one interview, he said the following: "At no point did I want to speculate as to what I thought this thing was, or to be associated with alien beings, alien aircrafts, and all that stuff. It was just what we call a UFO. I couldn't identify it, and it was flying. So to me, it was just an object. It's as simple as that." If anything, one thing this encounter has done has sparked a new interest in UFOs and unidentified phenomena. People are more interested in UFOs than ever before, and this could be in part because of the Navy UFO sighting. It's one of the clearest UFOs that have been captured on camera, and now the Navy have confirmed it's genuine. It's given these types of sightings more credibility. Usually when a UFO is seen by someone or caught on camera, it's usually debunked straight away. However, with this footage, it shows that even the Navy have encountered something they're not sure of. Unfortunately, the majority of UFOs and crafts that are caught on camera are not genuine. One paranormal researcher said the following about UFOs. UFOs make for great headlines and they interest many of us. However, what researchers can agree on is that 99% of them are not genuine. The majority of videos and photographs that are taken of UFOs do eventually get solved. The issue we are facing at the moment is that there's a lot of hoaxes out there, and they're making genuine researchers' lives very difficult. Instead of trying to find real evidence and help to publish the research further, what I'm finding is that the majority of my time is spent debunking videos that don't include anything of an unexplained nature. Every day, hundreds of videos of UFOs are taken, and if one sits down and applies logic, it becomes very easy to explain what's actually going on in the video. Most of these alleged UFOs turn out to be everyday things. This includes solar events, photograph anomalies, birds, military operations, balloons, conventional aircrafts, toys, and of course, hoaxes. Interestingly, the Pentagon has even got involved in the UFO phenomena. At the end of 2017, the United States Department of Defense began their subtle declassification process. This was by slowly declassifying a collection of military documents and research information to the general public. Usually these declassification processes are fraught with financial information, technical documents and references to training programs, government budgets, assistance with other nations, or basic procedures, of which do not hold any significant importance outside of technical military information. However, it became apparent very quickly to members amongst the UFO community that the declassified files coming from the Pentagon were more than just research and technical information. The files that were slowly being declassified over the course of the previous years detailed information regarding a clandestine team of researchers, tasked with getting information relative to unidentified flying objects and strange extraterrestrial sightings. Back in 2007, the Department of Defense began developing a UFO research program tasked with gathering information regarding unidentified flying objects and conducting research as to the observed aircrafts, their origin, and their technological prowess. The research group was quickly budgeted with $22 million in support, and a team comprising of military intelligence officials, researchers, and the highest levels of security clearance. The program itself went by the name of ADIP, which stood for the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program, and was given the primary objective of identifying these unidentified flying objects as whether or not they had potential threats to national security. It didn't take long for the ADIP team to gather a wide variety of strange sighting reports, of which were made by pilots from across the country, including associated data like camera footage and radar information while attempting to match these sightings with known international aircraft signatures. Expecting to find explanations to these crafts and their origin after the data had been compiled, it became rather obvious this would be more difficult than first thought. In fact, many of the researchers involved in the program regarded these UFO sightings and crafts as having no earthly origin and displaying behavior that couldn't be explained. This could very well be the closest the Department of Defense will ever come to admitting the viability of extraterrestrial craft without directly saying it. Although the program has currently been discontinued, which is the main cause for the declassification of the files, the chief of the UFO program still heavily believes in the importance of the study and the viability of his team to continue their research and gather information regarding issues of national security. Louis Lisandro, the program's chief military intelligence official, claimed that not only did these crafts exhibit behaviors that appear to defy the very laws of aviation, but that these crafts are found to be 100% non-man-made and were out of the scope of human capabilities. His reasoning for this claim was that the craft's investigator demonstrated hypersonic capabilities that were described as being far beyond the scope that's physically tolerable by a human being, of whom would experience a high amount of Gs to the point that would either be fatal or seriously wound them. This meant that whoever or whatever was piloting these aircrafts appeared to be non-human. Not only this, but the technological developments of the craft also made it very apparent that the creation of these unidentified flying objects were vastly superior to anything man-made. The program's official describes in one of his many reports regarding the subject as saying the following: "There is a lot we really don't know. We have identified anomalous crafts that do not have any obvious flight surfaces, forms of propulsion and maneuvering in ways that include extreme maneuverability, beyond the healthy G-forces of anything biological, low observability, and positive lift. These aircraft, will call them aircraft display capabilities, not in the U.S. arsenal or any other militaries." Not only does this help to supply overwhelming legitimate proof research and developments made in the UFO community, but demonstrates that the evidence regarding extraterrestrial life is both obvious and abundant amongst intelligent officials as well as legitimate in all regard. The main establishment of the secret UFO program and the objective of the UFO researchers involved in the program was to determine whether or not these unidentified flying objects were an issue of national security or posed a threat to the safety of UFO citizens and the U.S. government. It was originally believed that these crafts could have been aircraft developed by different militaries around the world, and given their ability to vanish off radar detection, could have been a variation on developments for stealth bombers or stealth aircrafts. This meant the number one task in regards to the UFI files was to determine the purpose of the aircrafts and their origin as to determine whether or not these aircrafts posed a threat. After it became fairly obvious that the unidentified flying objects were not man-made, the issues at hand became increasingly complex. The methods used to determine whether or not these crafts were a threat to national security circled around where these crafts were spotted, the technology the crafts used, and its ability to be used in warfare. Using these simple metrics, it became apparent to the researchers that not only were these unidentified flying objects a threat, but they demonstrated technological prowess that could not be matched if ever a fight played out. If you're someone that works in a job that involves demolishing buildings or excavating through areas that aren't well known, it's very likely you've discovered some interesting things. Workers have managed to uncover some of these relics and artifacts, and once studied, most of them are eventually identified. However, a construction worker who was working inside an old building made a surprising discovery when knocking down a wall. The person in question was said to be working on an old house, and that there was some structural damage to the house, so they were called in to fix it. When making their way to one room, they noticed there was a cover over the wall, and the worker guessed that something was behind there. After knocking through the wall, they discovered something that would spook many people. Behind the wall was an old-looking Ouija board. However, the worker couldn't figure out why the previous owners would want to seal the board behind the wall. Some have suggested the board in question is quite old, and that it could have been placed here after a session with the board went wrong. I've heard the last few decades there have been many stories detailing the board and how things don't always go to plan. This could have been the case for the previous owners, with one person suggesting they may have purchased the board for fun, but it ended up contacting something that caused them to flee the house. The construction worker who discovered the board didn't seem fazed by the stories though, as it was reported that when they discovered the woody board, they tried to find the planchette. There is of course another explanation for the board being where it was, and that could be the previous owners playing a prank on the next owners of the house. As of today, it's not known why the board was buried inside the wall, and why they had in their possession such an old version of the board. Another theory is that the board was passed down by previous family members, and this generation wasn't aware the board was concealed inside the house. Regardless of the origin, is certainly an interesting find, and not something you'd expect to come across while working. Ghosts, spirits, angels, demons, and many other such paranormal entities have captivated the minds of humans. For years we have heard stories about these mysterious entities, and a few of us have even experienced them firsthand. Despite all of the advancements made in science and technology, and despite scientists being, it seems that we have completely skipped over one particular field of study. It's the study of the paranormal. Many ancient civilizations studied paranormal activities, ways of interacting with different paranormal entities, and harnessing their power for the greater good. Probably the most famous curse game in existence is that of the Ouija board. Over the last few decades, it's led to many rumors, stories, movies, and even video games that were inspired by few witness accounts of the game commonly played during sleepovers. The Ouija board is using nothing more than a piece of wood with markings across it. They can be used to spell out any words and easily answer any yes or no questions. The strangeness of the game doesn't come from the board itself, but rather how it's used. Participants of the game must light a few candles and sit in a completely dark room around the board, and all collectively hold what's referred to as a planchette. After someone asks a question to the room, a spirit will begin to move the planchette as everyone remains holding onto it, and work to spell out the answer provided by the spirit. What's interesting about this game is that it's actually commonly used in seances and by psychics who wish to get into contact with spirits. In fact, there's a whole dedicated community online that will help you get the board that will best work for you, as well as provide the rules and etiquette of how to play the game without disturbing any malevolent spirits. The more aggressive part of the game comes from people who refuse to follow the proper rules and believe the cursed game to be nothing more than rumors and fake stories. The rejection of the rules will lead to a spirit attempting to attach itself onto the participants of the game and begin to attack or haunt the individual for as long as they wish. Accounts of this occurring have been all too common and have even led to the exorcisms and ritual cleansings just to get rid of those affected by the spirits that have attached to them. Throughout Arabic folklore is that of terrifying legends and reports of an entity similar to that of the jinn referenced throughout the Quran, but cursed to roam and dwell in locations away from people. This entity is known as the ghoul. The ghoul is that of a shape-shifting, demonic entity that's been reported as inhabiting cemeteries, wandering through the desert and taking on the form of animals and loved ones in an attempt to get close to someone before devouring them. Variations of the ghoul legend claim that once a ghoul devours someone, it will begin to take on their form and become stuck in that form until another person is devoured, or an incantation is spoken to allow it to return to its truly demonic form. It's due to this reason why many believe the ghoul inhabits cemeteries, as to allow it to take on the form of recently deceased loved ones, and whoever else it chooses. Interestingly, there's a number of reports and theories all throughout Iran and Afghanistan with people believing that the demonic entities of the jinn and the gul. One of the most haunting stories of a haunting coming from a demonic entity is that of the story of the Zozo demon and the countless number of people it has targeted in the past. According to reports made by people all across the internet, posting on blog forums, Reddit, and a number of open forum sites, it became apparent to many that the name of the Zozo demon kept popping up all around the world. The first known popular blog post concerning this demonic entity was written back in 2009 and made by a man named Daryl Evans, of whom referred to the dark entity as the Ouijaball demon. He gave the entity this name due to the fact that he first made contact with the Zozo demon when using a Ouija ball, and that he became obsessed with it in his spare time. According to Daryl, however, these proper rules weren't followed during the summoning of the Zozo demon. After the planchette of the board began spelling out Zozo over again, Daryl asked the spirit what its purpose was, to which he replied to bring you and your family paradise. When asked what paradise is, the demon slowly spelled out hell. Shortly after this, Darren wrote that no matter what he did, where he moved or what he tried to do, the spirit tortured him for years after this event, even going as far as causing his 1-year-old daughter to become violently ill. Though many have often claimed that Darren Evans made up the whole event, a whole community has formed around the Zozo demon. As many others have stepped forward claiming they've encountered the demon when playing with the Ouija board, as well as uncovering a number of ancient writings describing a demon referred to as Ozo, responsible for a number of terrorizing incidents in the past. Today, there are still reports of people being tormented by the entity all around the well. Another interesting account of a spirit comes from the 17th century. This was when there was a number of executions held at the Greyfriars courtyard. This was when the king at the time was attempting to convert many followers of the Christian faith to a newly founded state religion. Without much surprise, this has led to the Greyfriars courtyard being referenced by paranormal researchers as one of the most documented and reported haunted locations in the world. Though many hold the belief that the site remains to be at the center of a number of paranormal entities, many of them being among the 18,000 victims during the 17th century, others claim the main man behind the hauntings to be that of Sir George Mackenzie, the man single-handedly responsible for the suffering of the people during this time. Proof of this claim comes from the fact that the first reported attacks from this paranormal entity came from 1998. Shortly after a homeless man wanting to find shelter during a storm opened the tomb of Sir George Mackenzie. The first incident took place the following day after the tomb was broken into when a passerby attempted to enter the tomb, but was blasted back by a cold force of air that knocked them down. Later that day, another one was found near the tomb's entrance, passed out and lying across the front of the tomb with her neck completely covered in bruises. When she came back to consciousness shortly after, she told those concerned that she had walked by the tomb and found that she couldn't breathe, slowly losing consciousness shortly after. Since this day back in 1998, there have been more than 500 reported attacks near the tomb and throughout the Greyfriars Kirkyard, with an untold many more left unreported for fear of being ridiculed. Astronauts have perhaps one of the coolest jobs in the world. Over 560 people have made it into space, and with new discoveries in technology, it's said that within the next few years, that number will increase dramatically. Interestingly, over the past few decades, some of those who have ventured into space have reported seeing some mysterious anomalies. When astronauts come back and talk about these subjects, it usually makes the news. After all, these are the people that spent large amounts of time in space. So if you're going to believe anyone, it should be those who have been there. Dr. Helen Sharman is making the news for a statement she came out with. Reported by the BBC, they said that she said aliens exist and it's possible they are among us on Earth. She said the following about the subject. Aliens exist, there's no two ways about it. There must be all sorts of different forms of life among the billions of stars. Dr. Sharman is known for being the first British cosmonaut and the first woman to visit the Mir space station in May of 1991. Her take on aliens was that they might not look like humans, and they could be here on the planet right now and we may not be aware of it. This could be because we don't have the tools to be able to see them. This isn't the only interesting comment to come from an astronaut. Going back several years ago, an account of Dr. Story Musgrave details that of a strange creature outside of his spacecraft during 2 different solo space missions. He would, however, later go on to claim that he doesn't believe the sighting itself was evidence of extraterrestrial beings, and that they were not that of alien life. According to the story, as Dr. Story Musgrave was undergoing his solo mission, he described that he had begun to observe a strange snake-like creature following his craft. He would later provide an interview in 1994 in which he would state that the creature appeared to be a living snake, and that it moved across space and followed his craft for quite some time. He believed that perhaps the creature was terrestrial and had gotten up to the upper atmosphere to journey close to the spacecraft. Additionally, Dr. Story Musgrave claimed that such creatures were common in space, and that during any prolonged space mission it was relatively common for him to see a space snake falling behind the craft. Dr. Story Musgrave would also gather clips of video footage of the space snakes, to which more closely resembled the creatures found here on Earth. Dr. Story Musgrave claims that to this day he's not entirely sure what the creatures could be, and that he has no explanation for the sightings. As of right now, the vastness of space has left it to be one of the last unexplored frontiers of the human race. With it also comes a wide number of strange and anomalous properties that even the most well-versed experts on the matter can't explain. When taking on astronauts to begin a long scientific endeavor on missions into the zero-gravity nature of space, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration takes an incredible amount of variables into account, and this is to ensure the safety and longevity of the mission. For as long as research plans have continued over the many decades that astronauts have been tasked with conducting scientific missions in space, the continued research into the effects of isolation, zero gravity in the environment of the vacuum of the surrounding space, and the human mind and body have been gathered to better understand exactly what it is the astronauts must endure. Astronauts have carried out many missions on the International Space Station. For example, going back a few years ago, researchers on board were able to find out the changes of gravity do more than just affect the astronauts on the International Space Station. When the National Aeronautics and Space Administration conducted research regarding bacterial growth of salmonella in space, they found that for some strange reason the bacteria became far more dangerous after a spaceflight. Growing unrestricted in anti-gravity allowed the bacteria to become far more potent in nearly all regard, even compared to lower doses to the same bacteria on Earth. Many other strains of bacteria and viruses also demonstrated this rather horrifying behavior, and it became mandatory in appearance that all astronauts must be completely screened for any potential viruses and bacteria. This is to make sure that a new strain is not formed accidentally in the confines of the space station. This means that though there are efforts currently being handled and made by the private space agency, astronauts can very well be subjected to far more aggressive diseases and illnesses while aboard the International Space Station. As astronauts are constantly coming and going from the facility over time, recently NASA scientists have come forward and said that strange flashes of light can be seen on the moon's surface. As you can imagine, this has brought up all kinds of theories. Explanations so far have ranged from strange aerial phenomena to UFOs. This news comes not long after it was announced that our moon is shrinking. Scientists have said that their studies have shown that the inside of the moon has shriveled up and that deep cliffs can be found all over its surface. What's interesting is that this recent study suggests the moon could still be shrinking. The researchers have also come forward and said the moon's surface crust is brittle, and that due to the moon shrinking it's starting to break the surface. However, according to researchers, these lights have been puzzling scientists for years. This isn't the first time they've been seen, but as of right now they're not sure what the lights are or where they're coming from. It's being said, though, that a newly developed telescope may be able to provide the answers. Incredibly, these flashing lights have been recorded since the 18th century, and going back then they called them the dancing lights. Astronomers have even reported that other areas of the moon have been seen glowing different colors such as red. Astronaut Michael Collins said the following about the lights. There is an area that's considerably more illuminated than the surrounding area. It seems to have a slight amount of fluorescence to it. A crater can be seen in the area around the crater is quite bright. As of right now, scientists have suggested that it could be something known as lunar transient phenomena. This is when a color change happens on the surface of the moon for a short amount of time. Regardless, researchers will be carrying out an in-depth analysis of the lines. Another story comes from Gordon Cooper, one of the most influential American heroes of the 1950s, as well as the key figure in helping to locate a number of nuclear sites all around the world, was that of Major Gordon Cooper. Gordon Cooper has been a part of a number of top-secret missions in space, with several revolving around the use of highly advanced technologies to find locations of interest all around the world. Interestingly enough, during one of his many space missions, he claimed to have come into contact with an extraterrestrial craft. During Gordon Cooper's space mission that included a solo journey with a planned 22-orbit trip around the Earth, he claimed to have seen a glowing object that appeared to be bright green begin to slowly approach his spacecraft as he viewed it through the portal. Additionally, the approach of the object was also picked up by the tracking station located in Australia, confirming Cooper's encounter. This would lead to the astronaut eventually agreeing to take a 2-day mission in which he would work to analyze footage and evidence of extraterrestrial visitations that would eventually lead him giving a speech at the United Nations to discuss his findings. During his speech, he described later coming across evidence of extraterrestrial crafts, gathered evidence of anomalous aircraft, as well as stating the following: "I saw with my own eyes the defined air of ground being consumed with flames, with 4 indentations left by a flying object which had descended in the middle of a field. Beings had left the craft. There were other traces to prove this. They seemed to have studied topography. They had collected soil samples, and eventually they returned to where they come from, disappearing at enormous speeds." Gordon Cooper would later go on to be a key figure in the alien awareness movement, and claimed that his findings and studies were being covered up by the United States government, and this was under the claim that he was a national security threat for inciting panic despite his many years working for the government and assisting with efforts during the Cold War. Researchers and scientists have said it's likely that alien life is out there somewhere. Astronomers have estimated there's over 100 billion planets in the Milky Way alone. It's important to remember there's over 200 billion galaxies in the observable universe. This puts the chances of there being life out there extremely high. The main issue we're facing at the moment is reaching these distant planets. With space being so vast, it could be thousands of years before we're able to successfully travel large distances through space. So my question to you guys is, do you think there's life out there in the universe? And if so, do you think it's reached planet Earth? Scientists are trying hard to discover evidence of life out there in the vastness of space. Over the last few years, we've been making some breakthroughs in our solar system. Recently, we discovered that Mars once had water on it. Due to this discovery, various robots have been sent to the Red Planet to explore its climate and surroundings. The exploration of space is extremely important for our existence. With enough knowledge and technology out there, we could actually travel through space and live on certain planets in the near future. Recently, scientists have come forward and announced that a mysterious radio signal has caught their attention. This is because the signal has made itself known for the 5th year in a row. What's so mysterious about these signals is that usually we're not able to track them. But the team behind this study has managed to track the signal to a spiral galaxy. The galaxy in question is said to be over 495 million light-years from our planet, and that it's most likely linked to the mysterious fast radio bursts that have confused researchers for years. One of the astronomers who's been working on the case said the following about the signal's discovery: "This object's location is radically different from that of not only the previously located repeating fast radio bursts, but also all previously studied fast radio bursts. This blurs the difference between repeating and non-repeating fast radio bursts. It may be that FRBs are produced in a large zoo of locations across the universe and just require some specific conditions to be visible. This has caused some people to put forward the idea that these signals are being sent out by other civilizations. Although this sounds like an out-there theory, this is very possible, with scientists even coming forward and saying that it can't be ruled out. One of these that's confused scientists is that of FRB 121102. Something somewhere deep in the vastness of space is a mysterious object that continues to throw extremely large blasts of radio waves out from around it. Not only this, but it does it in all directions and traveling at the speed of light. Fast radio bursts, referred to as FRBs, have always been a mystery for astronomers and scientists in the field trying to understand the strange nature of the cosmos, and appear to be caused by super-dense pulsars that litter the galaxy and are the result of a collapsed and dying star. But oddly enough, there appeared to be a fast radio burst that did not seem to match the FRBs of previous pulsar data collection, leading many to believe the strange anomaly was actually that of an extraterrestrial civilization. This FRB is known as FRB 121102, and despite being more than 3 billion light-years away, has consistently sent more than 15 steady FRBs towards our planet. Currently, the SETI project is working to detect the next radio burst to try and decipher if it has an alien meaning, as previous data shows it's far too consistent and repetitive to be a standard pulsar. Interestingly, most of these signals have only been a one-off, but this one keeps trying to make itself known, and researchers are aware that it could be trying to get our attention. One of these signals was tracked by the CHIMI experiment in Canada. Researchers here managed to pick up on 8 new fast radio bursts. A worldwide team discovered 4 more FRBs and was able to track them to a spiral galaxy called SDSSJ015800.28 plus 6542530. Incredibly, one of these fast radio bursts was over 3 billion light-years away. To put that into perspective, our galaxy is 100,000 light-years in diameter and contains over 100 billion planets. One of the astronomers said the following: "The multiple flashes that we witnessed in the first repeating FRB arose from very peculiar and extreme conditions inside a very tiny galaxy. This discovery represented the first piece of the puzzle, but it also raised more questions than its whole, such as whether there was a fundamental difference between repeating and non-repeating FRBs. As of today, these fast radio bursts still remain a mystery." The research was published in the scientific journal Nature. Interestingly, this reminded some people of a mysterious signal that was discovered a while back. Going back a few years ago, researchers managed to discover a radio signal. However, at the time it was causing a lot of confusion as it couldn't be located. It was found by a large radio telescope in Australia known as the Dish. This telescope kept picking up on the strange interference in which the researchers couldn't explain. No one knew where it was coming from or what was making them. It wasn't until 17 years later that the astronomers got their answers. One of the first theories that was put forward was that these signals were coming from a local lightning strike. This theory was quickly put to rest when they received the interference when there was no lightning strike. Almost 2 decades and spending countless hours to try and figure out where the anomaly was coming from, they finally figured it out. Turns out what the astronomers were hearing wasn't anything impressive, and was in fact coming from very close by. The culprit was a microwave oven. One of the reasons it confused them so much is that the dish only picked up on the microwave when it was pointed directly at it, except from that it wasn't detecting the microwave. As anticlimactic as it was, there are still anomalies that have been picked up that are still waiting to be explained. Another interesting discovery has come from the Stratospheric Observatory for Infrared Astronomy. NASA announced they were able to capture an incredible insight into our local galactic neighborhood. The images that were taken were able to give us an insight into the Milky Way's interior and showed the researchers the swarming gases that make up this impressive galaxy. One of the most impressive things it was able to pick up on was that of Sagittarius A. In particular, something the researchers named the ring of debris-feeding Sagittarius A. The original estimates placed the supermassive black hole, referred to as Sagittarius A for residing at the Sagittarius constellation, as being no more than 4 million times the mass of our Sun, much smaller than previously discovered black holes. However, when measurements and estimates were taken again, researchers realized it was not just one of these supermassive black holes, but dozens of these large celestial bodies in orbit are moving around each other. When researchers attempted to take clearer images, it was soon revealed there was more than several thousand of these large supermassive black holes at the center of our Milky Way galaxy, some rivaling in size some of the largest celestial bodies ever witnessed before. It appears then that our galaxy rivals sights with quantity when it comes to the singularities moving through our galaxy, and that many more are predicted to be flying around at light speed or throughout our galactic cluster, impossible to detect and more than capable of swallowing stars in less than a second. Today, more and more estimates show that our original assumption was vastly incorrect. It could very well be that there are more than 10,000 supermassive black holes located at the center of our galaxy, with many more drawn in the group as they continue to fall inward at light speed, and forming under the crushing weight of our galactic forces. NASA had this to say about the discovery. Scientists can also more clearly see the material that may be feeding the ring around our galaxy's central supermassive black hole. The ring is around 10 light-years in diameter, and plays a key role in bringing matter closer to the black hole, where it may eventually be devoured. The origin of this ring has long been a puzzle for scientists because it may be depleted over time. But the SOFIA data revealed several structures which could represent material being incorporated into it. Interestingly, the WOW signal is said to have come from this region of space. On the 15th of August in 1977, a 72-second long transmission was captured while the Big A telescope was pointed towards the constellation Sagittarius, and it bore the expected hallmarks of extraterrestrial origin. In fact, prior to this event back in 1959, researchers put forward the theory that if extraterrestrial contact was ever made, it would most likely be in that of a radio wave frequency of 1420 MHz, which is the frequency naturally emitted by hydrogen, the most common element in the universe, and therefore likely familiar to all technologically advanced civilizations. Oddly enough, the 72-second long transmission was exactly within the 1420 MHz frequency, with peaks and lows exactly equal to each other in variation, showing not only was this a mathematically symmetrical frequency, but that there was no possible way this frequency could have a non-artificial origin. This 72-second transmission was then given the title of the Walt signal, which was named after the lead researcher who discovered the signal in the data, and wrote the small side note of WOW. Skeptics and researchers to this day have had massive difficulty trying to explain away what the signal could have been from, and so it could very well be that on a lonely planet out in the Sagittarius constellation we heard the radio signal of a greeting more than 25,000 light-years away. As our technology continues to grow, humanity has begun to peer ever closer at the numerous impossible to understand astronomical wonders of the universe. Though some of these wonders may prove to be nothing more than recurring features of our intriguing galaxy as we expand our information further out into the greater unknown, there appears to be a number of anomalies close to our era of space that could host potential life. With the Milky Way galaxy being home to over 100 billion planets, and the universe being home to billions of galaxies, the likelihood of there being life on at least one of these planets is very likely, and researchers are hoping that within the next few decades we'll be able to track down extraterrestrial life. As of right now, the best thing we have is searching for habitable planets, and although a lot of areas of space are too hostile for human life to exist, there are some places where humans could potentially live. One of these has recently made the news, and it goes by the name of TOI 700e. This planet was discovered using NASA's Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite. This planet stood out to researchers because upon first glance it was very similar to Earth. In fact, it has a radius of 1.1 times that of Earth's, and orbits within its habitable zone. This means that the planet could host life. TOI 700d can be found orbiting TOI 700, which is a red dwarf star roughly 10 light-years away in the Dorado constellation. This is said to be the only exoplanet in the habitable zone. The planet is said to have many of the features as Earth does. This includes things like rocky surfaces and mountainous regions. The planet receives 86% of the energy that the Sun provides to Earth. Emily Gilbert was the person behind the discovery. Astronomers have said the following about the planet. TOI 700 hosts several small planets and is ideal for mass measurements using precision radial velocity follow-up. The planets are also interesting targets for transit observations to place constraints on their atmospheres. This system and other discoveries from the first year of TESS observations fulfill the mission's goal of identifying new exoplanets primed for detailed follow-up and provide a positive outlook for TESS's second year in extended mission observations. Dr. Gabrielle Souza, a research assistant at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center, said the following about the planet. Our 3D climate models examined a variety of surface times and atmospheric compositions typically associated with what scientists regard to be potentially habitable worlds. Because TOI 700d is tidally locked to its star, the planet's cloud formations and wind patterns may be strikingly different from ours. One simulation included an ocean-covered TOI 700d, with a dense carbon dioxide-dominated atmosphere similar to what scientists suspected the model atmosphere contains a deep layer of clouds on the star's facing side. Another model depicts the planet as a cloudless, all-land version of modern Earth, where winds flow away from the night side of the planet and converge on the point directly facing the star. When starlight passes through a planet's atmosphere, it interacts with molecules like carbon dioxide and nitrogen to produce distinct signals. These are called spectral lines. As of right now, not much is known about the planet. It was discovered on the 3rd of January 2020. More research will most likely be carried out on this interesting planet to try to better understand its makeup and if life could be on there. One of the most interesting discoveries of recent months has been that surrounding the discovery of many new exoplanets by the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite. For those that aren't aware, back in 2009 the Kepler satellite was launched with the purpose of discovering planets all across our galaxy and helped to shed light on the discovery of a number of potentially habitable Earth-like planets located very close to our own. This mission proved to be such a success and at the center of a number of incredible discoveries that this led to the creation and launch of another satellite, and this is known as the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, and this was designed with the purpose of discovering exoplanets moving across the surface of their parent star and revealing their size in the shadows. Despite this new state-of-the-art system having been launched back on the 18th of April 2018, it's already made a number of incredible discoveries in recent months. These discoveries include 8 new confirmed planets, 300 additional planetary candidates, a number of gas planets, and many Earth-like planets that have been missed by previous Kepler missions. Additionally, these new discoveries have allowed the new revolution that for a planet to form similar in size to that of Jupiter, it must have an orbit that's been disrupted, allowing it to form to such a massive size, providing new insights as to exactly how gas giants are formed in the universe. At the rates that this new satellite is uncovering new planets, it will surely pass the Kepler satellite in a few years, as well as lead to a number of incredible insights and discoveries in the academic field of astrophysics itself. Over the years, astronomers have picked up on mysterious radio signals deep in space. These have caused excitement as many of these have come from far out to galactic clusters. Going back a few years ago, Russian astronomers picked up on a star approximately 94 light-years from Earth. What's interesting about this is that the researchers are uncertain whether these signals were being transmitted by an advanced alien race or alien hunters such as ourselves, whose radio signals were discovered in 2015, and of course many people to put 4 different theories. The researchers, however, are not sure they are alien in nature and have said they need to conduct more research to find out more about their origins. Due to how vast the universe is, though, anything is possible, and we can't rule out the possibility of advanced civilizations. Although many remark that the age of information has been one of the greatest economic booms since the discovery of the New World and the development of colonization, there are many others who believe that the advancements of pioneer exploration are only just the beginning and that the next few decades should see an explosion of resources, materials, land, and economic development. This is due to the predictions researchers give when analyzing the incredible capacity of technological innovation and transportation when it comes to development of spacecrafts and space exploration. A single asteroid alone holds enough precious minerals to generate more than $1 trillion worth of gold, silver, and platinum, and the current efforts being taken by SpaceX and the National Aeronautics and Space Administration are more than paving the way for efforts into colonization of the nearby red planet. Not only will these efforts lead to a boost in the production of industrial materials, along with cheaper electronics, equipment, and resources necessary for creating such products, but the colonization of new land will more than pave the way for economic world powers to form and continue carrying on the seed of human life. The advent of the age of space will more than be enough to become the major stepping stones for the economics of the future, while seeing a level of prosperity unprecedented in human history. Once it comes, such a boost will never again be seen in future generations to come. And given the fact that SpaceX plans to land a Martian colony by 2025, with NASA shortly to follow in 2030, this reality is more than expected to occur within our collective lifetimes. Interestingly, many different private organizations have begun designing and constructing deep space technologies to begin areas of asteroid mining and collecting deep space resources. The European Space Agency, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, and NASA have been working very hard to find out if we're completely alone. Today, we have a big number of projects that are made to scan the stars for extraterrestrial life. Something researchers are intrigued by is Saturn's moon Enceladus. It's been put forward that this moon may be able to support life. This claim comes after researchers suggest its ocean is over 1 billion years old, further saying that this is a sweet spot. NASA reported at the 2019 Astrobiology Science Conference that the time frame is long enough there to be life. One of the research scientists said the following: in the scenario that best matches the real moons, the ocean on Enceladus is around 1 billion years old. That's good news for life. It should have had long enough to arise, and there should still be some energy to power it. Cassini was a spacecraft who arrived in the Saturn system back in 2001. It made 127 flybys of Titan and 23 flybys of Enceladus. The Cassini mission ended on September the 15th, 2017, and this was due to loss of contact. After making these flybys, though, Cassini gave researchers an incredible insight into how the moon is doing. It's not the airless, icy body as it was previously assumed. The detection of the thermal infrared in the 4 tiger stripe fractures means that Enceladus heats up from the inside out. It's believed the friction caused by the gravitational forces of Saturn has been affecting the heating of Enceladus. On our planet, hydrophonal vents are filled with organisms we cannot see anywhere else, with some scientists saying there are whole worlds in these vents that many of us have never seen before. This could be what's happening on Enceladus. Researchers have said there is evidence of hydrothermal vents on the seafloor of Enceladus. Hydrothermal vents usually form at locations where magma and seawater meet. Water runs down the cracks into the core, where it's heated and then comes back out again. Just like Europa, Enceladus is also believed to have a global ocean found under its icy surface. All of the data collected related to Enceladus points out to the fact that it really does have the 3 ingredients required for life. It seems that scientists are one step closer to finding life in our very own solar system. Our solar system is tiny when compared to the rest of the universe, and it makes you wonder what else could be out there. Pilots have been coming forward with mysterious encounters they've had while in the sky. One of these comes from 1953, and it details that of an Air Force jet that mysteriously disappeared. The incident happened over Lake Superior on the 23rd of November, 1953. A U.S. Air Defense commander noticed a small blip on one of the radars. Interestingly, there shouldn't have been anything there at the time. So shortly after its discovery, a superior was told about the mysterious object. It was described as an unidentified flying object, and soon after an F-89C Scorpion took off. One of the reasons alarm bells were going off is because this object was above restricted airspace, so the military had to treat it with a degree of seriousness. It was then up to Lieutenant Felix Munkler to investigate the unidentified flying object. He was someone who had over 800 hours of flying experience, and with him was Second Lieutenant Robert Wilson, another person who was highly qualified. The reason this story has interested many people, though, is because the men didn't return from this mission, and interestingly, this seems to have been the case for other pilots who have intercepted unidentified flying objects. One of the reasons the case is known is because a former naval aviator decided to include it in their book, and details it as being one of the strangest cases involving UFOs on record. Once the pilots had reached the air, they started to search for the mysterious object. However, it became apparent to the men that the object was nowhere in sight. Once they radioed into ground control, they were able to guide them in the direction of the object. But they didn't note that the unidentified flying object was able to change its course at a fast rate, and that keeping up with whatever it was could be a challenge. The jet was estimated to be traveling at over 500 miles per hour, and even at that speed it struggled to catch up with whatever the object was. It traveled in the same direction as the unidentified flying objects for 30 minutes, and with each passing minute the object seemed to have slowed down, almost as if it wanted the jet to catch up. The radio operator on the ground was working hard to direct the pilot on the same course as the UFO. And one thing that was picked up on by the operator is that the object suddenly dropped around 18,000 feet in a matter of seconds. The operator then passed this information on to the pilot and told him he would need to follow whatever it was. Ground control were then able to see the blip the whole time and remarked on how strange it was acting. As the pilot approached the objects, something happened that wired ground control. They described it as being locked together. Then a matter of seconds later it appeared as if the plane had completely vanished. Not wanting to jump the gun, ground control waited to see if this reading would change, but it didn't. The operator said the following: it disappeared from the ground-controlled interception station's radar scope. The United States Air Force, United States Coast Guard, and Canadian Air Force then said they would be conducting an extensive search and rescue effort. However, as of today, nothing has been found in regards to the pilot or plane. The official answer is that the crew vanished. The Air Force's official statement was the following: the jet was followed by radar until it merged with an object. Interestingly, not long after this was released, the Air Force soon retracted the statement and changed its story. Turns out that the Air Force was now saying it was the ground control operator's fault what happened, and that they had misidentified what was in the sky that day. They said there was no UFO, and what was actually in the sky was that of a Royal Canadian Air Force C-47 aircraft. Interestingly, however, in another turn of events, after this news got released, Canadian officials refuted the account, saying that no flight had taken place in the area of that night, and whatever was seen had nothing to do with them. As with many of these cases, there are various explanations that allegedly explain what happened. One investigator supposedly found out the truth, and that there was a UFO that was detected. However, the jet didn't merge with the object and disappear. Instead, the plane was flying too low and actually lost control and ended up in a nearby lake, taking the lives of the men on board. The reason the Air Force didn't want this information getting out is because they would be responsible. And it doesn't sound great that a seasoned pilot lost their life due to chasing a UFO. Another report states the object in question once again was real, but while in the sky intercepting it, something happened that caused the jet to catch fire. Another mystery is that various investigators soon vanished after researching the case. As of today, it's unknown what actually happened that day. Another mysterious case involves that of Frederick Vlantage. On the 21st of October, 1978, a man by the name of Frederick Vlantage disappeared under mysterious circumstances. He was flying across the Bay Strait in a Cessna aircraft while on a 230 kilometers training flight. At this point, he'd already done around 150 hours of flying time, which made him an amateur pilot. He was confident in this type of flights and decided to do the journey. On that day, at around 7 p.m. at night, the pilot radioed into the Melbourne Flight Control Center to report an unknown aircraft. He stated it was following him at around 4,500 feet. The service responded and told him there was no traffic close to him at the time of the report. Vlantage was adamant about what he saw, saying a sizable, unknown aircraft was closing in at high speeds, saying it had 4 bright landing lights. He added that the aircraft that kept approaching him was metallic and shiny, with a green light on it. Minutes later, Vlantage reported that he was having problems with the engine, and that when the service asked him to identify the aircraft once more, he radioed and said it isn't an aircraft. A noise like a metallic scraping sound interrupted before the transmission was cut off. Shortly after a scene air search were conducted around the area he was last seen in, but nothing turned up. The case was closed after the Department of Transport investigated the case, but found nothing, assuming the disappearance to be fatal. 5 years later, an engine cowl flap that came from a Cessna aircraft similar in range to Vlantage was found whilst ashore on Finnair's Island. According to his father, before his disappearance, Vlantage believed in UFOs and was right by the thought of being attacked by one. Ufologists believe that his aircraft was either destroyed by extraterrestrials or they abducted him. Interestingly, locals close to where he went missing stated they saw bright green lights around the same time. Some, however, have put forward the idea that Vlantage staged his own departure. With all the theories surrounding the disappearance of Frederick Vlantage, none have been able to give a solid answer for what happened. Another mysterious case comes from an American airline pilot. The pilot said the following about their encounter. While flying above Florida, I witnessed something I couldn't explain. I'm a trained professional, and my job has taught me about the different aircrafts we may encounter while flying. We also know certain codes that passengers don't understand. On this particular occasion, I was on a routine flight. The sky was clear except from a few clouds, and everything was running smoothly. However, during the flight, something in the distance kept catching my eye. It was like there was a large piece of metal in the sky. Its reflection was bright, and to a certain extent, it was beginning to distract me. As we got closer, I could see this object appear to be hovering. At this point, it started to bother me that I couldn't identify what it was. I asked air traffic control if there was anything close by. However, they said they didn't have anything on radar. It was at this point I thought this thing may have been weather related. If I had to guess, I would say this object was 200 feet away from me at this time. As the journey continued, I noticed this object would peep in and out of the clouds, almost as if it was using them for cover. After parting the small amount of clouds, I then noticed this thing started to follow the plane. I could now see the objects more clearly and was even more confused. The craft in question was emitting a bright light, and it reminded me of strong LED lights. If I had to guess, I would estimate the craft was 40 feet in diameter. One of the most strangest things is that this craft didn't look natural. It looked as though it was darting around in the sky. As I moved closer, I was able to see it for 20 or 30 seconds. Then it was suddenly darted somewhere in the sky. The whole encounter lasted for around half an hour. I then lost sight of it after this brief encounter. After getting a good view of this object, it didn't compare to anything I've seen before. It was more bizarre than anything else I've seen in the sky, and to this day I haven't seen anything that matched this object. Encounters with paranormal entities have been reported for decades. What makes these reports interesting is the fact they go beyond just stories, having many people come forward with their encounters, and even struggling to explain what it was they encountered. The most common of these entities is said to be that of ghosts and other paranormal beings. These have been reported for years by various people all across the world. However, equally confusing is the high number of mysterious people cases that have been reported in recent years. It may sound far-fetched, but there are some out there that believe humans have the ability to take on supernatural traits, and sometimes these individuals are referred to as witches. All over the planet, you can find cases of witches. In recent years, however, it's known that the majority of these cases were massively overlooked, and the people being accused of these actions were in fact just regular people. The sad truth is many lost their lives over these claims, with some having to move locations in fear of being caught in meeting a similar demise. With that being said, there are some that do believe certain people possess supernatural powers, and that every so often these individuals make themselves known. Back in the early 1990s, there appeared to be strange rumors spreading all across India that spoke of a witch walking through the streets after midnight, speaking in the voice of their target's mother as it would knock on the front door of their target's house in an attempt to get in. The rumors came to be known as that of the Witch of Bangalore, as it was believed to have focused the majority of its time around the air of Bangalore, and was the center of the majority of its sightings. This led to many people being scared to open the front door to their houses if they heard their mother calling their name, regardless of the time of day. It was not until one genius Indian child came up with a brilliant solution to prevent the witch from targeting anyone else in the future. The child claimed that if people wrote the words "nail bar" on the front door, a phrase that translates to "come back tomorrow," then the witch will be forced to return the next night, only to see the sign again and repeat the cycle. This led to a wide number of people writing the phrase on their front door, leading to the continued urban legend to this day, and the reason why the phrase might appear on the doors of residential zones or throughout Bangalore. Interestingly, another case would begin to make the rounds back in 2006, and it detailed that a group of unknown objects were being seen in Mexico. The Mexican press were one of the first places to report the mysterious event, with several people then coming forward to comment on the matter. Interestingly, these objects that were being seen were being described by some as a UFO, but there was a large majority that said that although the objects were floating, the identity of them was more human-like. These unidentified flying objects were then said to have been witnessed by some locals before the main event happened, and that even then they had no idea what they were looking at. The main footage and images comes from a group called Ovnian Club de Nuevo Leon, which translates to the UFO Club. This club is said to be one of the largest UFO groups in Mexico, and one that over the years has investigated and reported multiple claims. However, these mysterious beings or crafts would be one of the strangers they'd come across. Described as looking like a large humanoid, the objects in the footage could be seen flying close to the nearby mountains. The witches of Monterey then started to spread throughout the region, and residents even came forward with alleged encounters with the witches. One of the local residents described their encounter with a strange woman. They said that at the time they were walking home with a friend, then suddenly a woman seemed to have appeared out of nowhere and asked where they were going. As the girl replied saying they were heading home, the woman just stared blankly at them. Immediately, the girl thought to herself that something seemed off about the woman and so continued her journey. After looking behind a few seconds later, they noticed the woman who they'd just been speaking to had vanished. However, when they got to the end of the street, the strange woman once again came into sight. However, this time she managed to somehow get in front of them. She was seen under a nightlight staring at the girls. At this point, they got worried and soon ran home. The girl said she hasn't encountered or seen the woman since, and said she was glad she decided to run the rest of the way home. Another interesting account of these beings comes from that of a police officer. The story goes that a Mexican police officer was on patrol in his car when he encountered a mysterious being. At around 3 in the morning, he turned into a street that was on his normal route. However, on this occasion something wasn't right. In the distance, he could see what appeared to be a large black object falling from a tree. Thinking it may have been a resident or someone that needed assistance, he decided it would be best to go and investigate. However, as he started to approach the object, he could see that it hadn't actually hit the ground, and whatever it was somehow hovering around a foot above the ground. As the officer approached the levitating object in his car, it then slowly started to descend. When it touched the floor, the officer shouted whatever it was to turn around. After getting no response from the individual, he put his 4 beams on. This caused the creature to become wild. It started to cover his face, but at this point the officer was able to give a good description of the individual. He said that it was a woman with pale skin and that possessed 2 large brown-black eyes. He said that looking into the eyes made him feel nervous, and that he didn't like being around whatever it was. After observing it for around a minute, the entity then leapt onto the hood of the car and started going crazy. The officer noted that whatever it was, it tried really hard to get to him, and that he tried his best to stay away from it. He was also able to describe the clothing of the individual, saying that it was wearing a black cloak and that it reminded him of a witch. At this point, he made it a priority to get out of there and call for backup. Interestingly, as he reached the end of the street, he started to feel lightheaded, and then before he knew it, he lost consciousness. He was discovered by fellow officers, and it turned out he wasn't hurt, but his team members noted that he was in a bad way, and that something serious must have happened for him to be put in this situation. When he started to come around, all of his workers were interested as to what happened that night, and as you can imagine, he was hesitant about telling people as he thought he would be marked. When the other officers did eventually hear about what had happened, they were doubtful. The officer in question was then asked to undergo several tests in order to make sure that nothing was in his system. He was happy to do this, and all the tests were negative. The next thing he was asked to do is submit himself for a psychiatric evaluation. At this point, he felt like no one believed what he had seen, but he knew he had to do this if anyone was going to believe him. Once again, though, the test came back fine. The police officer's story then gained further credibility when residents started to come forward with their own encounters, and that on the night of his sightings, others reported seeing a strange woman hovering in the area. But as soon as they tried to record the being, she managed to vanish. Going back to the witches that are allegedly seen in the sky, although there are some individuals that hold the idea that what was seen that day was in fact a witch, there seems to be an even larger amount of people that suggest that what was seen that day was actually a UFO. One of the most interesting things about the event is that the object in question was seen really low to the ground. This is something that's not usually seen when it comes to an unidentified flying object. A large group of people were able to witness and photograph the encounter. This adds credibility to the event, and that something actually happened on that day. One of the main issues is trying to figure out what the local residents were seeing. Theories have ranged from an unidentified flying object to military technology, a witch, and even a hoax. Interestingly, some researchers who were able to sit down and view the footage and images said it was interesting. One of the things they picked up on is how the objects reacted to the wind. They suggested that if this was edited, it would have been a lot more smooth, whereas these objects seem to have moved with the wind, something you'd expect to see if it was actually there. As with these types of sightings, though, not everyone is entirely won over. In fact, some have offered some other ideas as to what the objects could be. One person suggested the objects weren't witches and weren't fact balloons. The video was a prank, with balloons being tied to a plastic bag and then released. When the wind picked up the objects, it gave the effect that it was a UFO. However, many have said if this was the case, there's not enough balloons tied to the bag to cause this effect, and balloons in wind are much more erratic. Eyewitnesses said that whatever it was moving smoothly across the skyline.